My purpose today is to talk a bit about the Center of Excellence and what we're offering, and to get into some of the content of a curriculum that we've developed specifically around culturally responsive care for LGBT people. This is really a 10-hour curriculum that we can also do in about 6 hours or one full day of training. I'm going to give you an hour and a half of it today. And so it clearly is a very high-level overview, but we'll talk a bit about how you can get access to the curriculum materials and even become a trainer of the curriculum if you're a trainer and you're interested in doing so. But that's why I'm here. Why are you here? There's a lot of other sessions going on that I think sound really interesting. Why'd you pick this one? What do you hope to get out of it? Yeah.
I teach multicultural counseling, and I'm always looking for new stuff.
Great. Okay,
so
perfect.
frankly, I'm here to steal your material.
Excellent, thank you. Is that it? You're just all here to steal my materials? Why else are you here? Yeah.
I'm here because I used to work at Walden House in San Francisco, and they had a very good lesbian gay community. It was very strong and powerful in the city. And I haven't worked there for a couple of years, and I'm just going to renew that energy.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. What else? Yeah.
I'm a contractor with SAMHSA, and I do site visits to drug treatment programs that receive SAMHSA funding. And one of the questions we always ask is, are you offering culturally competent services, targeted services for LGBT populations? And I just would like to know what that entails.
Awesome. That's fantastic, because when you look at the SAMHSA treatment locator, almost everybody says we offer LGBT services. And when I call them up and ask questions about that, they go, huh? Or they demonstrate really, really quickly, if they even know what I'm talking about, that maybe they're not. So I'm really glad you're here. Thank you very much. You were going to say something.
Yeah, one kind of wrong on the truth. Two, because as you just said, it is very underserviced. But you got your information, this is my information. That's one of the very few people that are serviced. So I can use as much information as possible.
Fantastic.
And my opinion is accurate.
Great. Thank you very much. Anyone else?
I just think they're underserved and
Awesome. So an underserved population, you want to learn more about it. Yeah, Manny.
I always think that there's so much, I mean, I work with LGBT clients, but I always think that there's always something that we can learn about in the presentation, and I always enjoy the presentations, so that's why I do it.
Aw, shucks. Thanks, Manny. And I think that that's right. And I think that there's undoubtedly a lot of expertise in the room. I don't care if we get through all my slides or not. You have handouts of them and you can have them, if you want them. But I'd rather just have a conversation with you, and I'll make sure we cover some important stuff along the way. And let's share our expertise and what we know about this population and how to better serve them. So I do want to spend just a few minutes doing a bit of a commercial for our Center of Excellence. The website is ymsmlgbt.org. We'll talk a bit about the alphabet soup in just a little bit. But when we got stuck with this name, we just decided to own it. So our shortened acronym is YMSM LGBT Center of Excellence. The center is a supplement that was given to our Addiction Technology Transfer Center, specifically the Pacific Southwest ATTC. The ATTC network is a multi-component project. First of all, there are 10 regional centers. Pacific Southwest, if you're from the region, we cover California, Arizona, Nevada, Hawaii, and the 6 U.S. affiliated Pacific jurisdictions. So I'm out in the Western Pacific frequently. But in total, we cover all 50 states, the U.S. territories, and the freely affiliated independent jurisdictions. So we're trying to provide training in the best of science on addiction-related issues across the country. There are also 4 nationally focused centers. One, the National Frontier and Rural ATTC, located at University of Nevada, Reno, is focused specifically on serving rural populations using technology, so using telehealth and other kinds of technology to reach out to those populations. There's the National American Indian Alaska Native ATTC and the National Hispanic and Latino ATTC, and then there's one that's focused specifically on screening and brief intervention. And then there are 2 centers of excellence that have been funded. Ours on LGBT-related issues, and one on working with pregnant and postpartum women. And so as a network, we're pretty comprehensive. Most of what we do is in the public domain. And so you can take it, you can use it. The stuff that isn't, you can get access to it. And generally, it's just any costs associated with that would be to help us recoup the costs associated with developing those products that weren't paid for by our grant. So I would encourage you to go to attcnetwork.org if you're not familiar with this and look at those resources overall. The particular program that I'm going to talk about is multifaceted. We've got multiple ATTCs, SAMHSA involved. The curriculum that I'm going to show you pieces of today was largely authored by the group in Iowa City, and these are all the people who worked on it. We have an advisory board with members of the community from across the country, each of whom bring a wide variety of expertise. A large group of content experts who've contributed information to this, and then specific people who've helped us to author each of the modules within the larger curriculum. How is that for covering about 55 people in 3 seconds? The Center of Excellence, our real mission is to a couple of things. First of all, to create a clearinghouse of information. Right now, we have about 200 research articles on LGBT-related research that's been done, all of which, if you like the title of it, you can click on it and it'll take you to the abstract in PubMed. If you have library privileges, you can use that to then go on to the full text article. But at least anyone who accesses it can get access to the abstract and see some of the original research that's been done with the community. There's also a compendium of treatment protocols. It's small because not many have been developed that have been specifically targeted to this population, the ones we've been able to gather, and then additional resources of a variety of types that we've tried to put on there. If you go to our website and you say this is missing, let us know. We want to know because we want to continue to build that. The other thing that we were charged with doing is developing a couple of curriculum. One, an update to the curriculum that was developed by the ATTCs on the 2001 Provider's Introduction for Serving Substance-Using LGBT People. The world has changed a lot since 2001, right? In good ways and some in not so good ways for our communities. And the materials were completely out of date. And so what I'm going to show you today is pieces of the updated curriculum. We're working on right now another curriculum that's focused specifically on the needs of racial and ethnic minority young men who have sex with men. Because of the disparate HIV rates in that particular population, we were charged with that being a specialty focus of ours. And so we're working on that curriculum. It's complicated, it's political, it's got lots of permutations in it, and so we're working really hard on it to make sure that it's right when we release it. We anticipated having done about 5 months ago, and it's not done yet. So within the next few months, we'll be able to roll that out. This curriculum is being offered through trainers that we developed. SAMHSA is very invested in making sure the same message goes out across the country. We've done 2 training of trainers sessions, one in Washington, D.C. at SAMHSA, one in Seattle just a couple of weeks ago. Each of them had 20 people participating in it. We're going to do another one in Minnesota in September. We are accepting applications now through mid-July. So if someone is interested in becoming a trainer on this curriculum, we're accepting applications. You have to show you have good content knowledge with the population. You have to show that you have stand-up training experience, because we don't want to train either of those things. What we want to talk about is how difficult it is to train on this content area and then teach you to train our curriculum. And so if you or you know people who are interested in that, we are accepting applications. It is likely we'll do 2 additional TOTs, one in Los Angeles, to be scheduled, and one at Mike's shop at NDRI. That one will likely be in Spanish with the Spanish translated curriculum that we're expecting to receive from our translators in September. So more to be said on that one, but just trying to continue to expand that. All the information on that can be gotten from our website, ymsmlgbt.org. That's the commercial. Anything to add, Mike? All right. Any questions, comments, concerns, anything? Let's talk a little content, shall we? I want to start with some key concepts and key terms to make sure that we all have a similar kind of understanding. This is a partial list of terms that are related to the LGBT community, but a couple I want to focus on specifically. First of all, sex. What is that? When we use the word sex, what do we mean? Oh, come on in, we're talking about sex. What is that? I know you thought you were just going to listen to me, but I don't roll that way. So what do we mean when we say sex? Physical, intimate interactions. Good. So if we're talking about the behavior, absolutely. But if we're talking about a defining characteristics of a human, and we say sex, male or female, how do we know? Where do we get this label of male or female as it applies to sex? Their characteristics when they're born. That's exactly right. So when you come out of mom, in whichever way you make that path, the doctor looks at the baby and it's got an innie, it's a girl. If it's got an outie, it's a boy, right? We're not talking about this. So it's really based on the secondary sex, the primary sex characteristics that are physically demonstrable when the child is born. Does that explain all of sex when we're just talking about biology now? Of course not, right? There's lots of genetic differences, there are lots of developmental differences that may create all kinds of different kinds of outcomes in terms of what the doctor sees. But it's a really important concept because very often when we talk about sex, when we talk about gender, what we're actually talking about is sex, which is whether they have a penis or a vagina. So what's gender? If it's not about penises and vaginas, what is gender? You point to your head, put that to words.
Between your ears. It's how you identify.
It's how you identify.
It's about this.
Good, right. So it's not about what's going on in your body, it's how you identify yourself. It is your internal sense of who am I as a male or a female or something else between or different from those things. But it's your sense of identity, that's exactly right. So, gender expression, is that the same thing as gender identity or is that different? It isn't. What is it?
That's hair and clothes and makeup and language and
Good.
it's this.
So it's how you adopt, thank you very much, it's how you adopt the societal norms associated with what is male and what is female, and how well do you conform to this end of the spectrum or that end of the spectrum or somewhere in between. I generally present pretty male in my gender expression. We haven't talked about my gender identity yet, so or my sex for that matter. So there's a lot that you don't know about me, but there's a lot that you can assume about me based on the way I choose to express myself in the world. Sexual orientation, I knew I was missing one. What's that? What's pleasurable? Good, that's a component of it. Someone over here? Who you're attracted to. Who you're attracted to meaning what? Can you put more words around that?
Maybe primarily sexually.
Okay.
Who do I want to partner with or who do I have chemistry with?
Good, yeah. Who do you have chemistry with? Who are you affectionately or sexually attracted to? Who do you want to form relationships with primarily, those familial kind of relationships? And who do you want to do it with, right? Is really important. But when we're talking about sexual orientation, are we talking about sex or are we talking about gender? It's not. It does matter, actually, because who I am and who you are is what determines sexual attraction and sexual orientation, right? So if I am a boy person, as I see myself, and you are a female person as you see yourself, right? Then that would, in essence, make my sexual orientation, I would define it for myself, but we would see generally that person as a heterosexual male. But what if that female person had the sex of male assigned to them when they were born? So they have a penis, or at least at some point in their history did. Now they're a woman, and I, as a man, am attracted to that woman. What's my sexual orientation?
You're male, she's female. It's heterosexual.
Heterosexual. The penis is irrelevant. That's exactly right, right? So male-male attraction, gender to gender, would be considered a homosexual or a gay male, female-female, lesbian or gay or homosexual female. Opposite gender attraction, generally heterosexual, and both with some fluidity that we'll talk just a little bit about in a few minutes, bisexual. And many people don't fall on that continuum at all. I see your question, but just hold it for 1 second if you would. So what we have to determine if we begin thinking about how do we responsibly understand sex, gender, and sexual orientation, is we have to think about these 4 quadrants. Now, we're never gonna label someone with that, but as providers, it helps us to be able to sort of figure out what box I think they're in, and then mold from that box as we move along. So I don't like this, and I don't like this, I like this, okay? And what this is, it puts everything on a continuum. So if we look at sex assigned at birth, there are people who are assigned female, there are people who are assigned male, and there are people for whom they can't immediately make an assignment, and generally we refer to them now as intersex people. If we mapped me, the sex I was assigned at birth is male, okay? So in terms of gender identity, we've got female, we've got male, and we've got androgynous or somewhere in between in that section. And again, if you map me, my gender identity is male. My gender expression, pretty straightforward male today, but not always. I get fabulous sometimes. And so I still think I'm always on the male side of the continuum, but when on those more fabulous days, I'm a little pushing some of the envelope a little bit. I make people a little bit uncomfortable when I walk down the streets on occasion. So I'd put myself a little further in there. In terms of my sexual orientation, if I could put an X over there on the male side, whoops, I got really excited. If I could put an X way over there on the male side, I would. I'm the gayest guy I know, right? So what this was make me, sex assigned at birth, male, gender identity, male, sexual orientation, oriented toward males, that would make me a cisgendered male, cisgendered gay male. Ooh, I introduced a new term, didn't I? Yeah, what is that? Has anyone heard cisgender before? Yeah, good. So someone tell me what cisgender is. What's that? Same gender, right. It comes from a Greek, just like trans does. Trans means across. The Greek word, I'm gonna have to learn what the word is at some point because I can't hold on to it. But the Greek word that this root piece means the same. So if your gender identity matches the sex that you were assigned at birth, you are cisgendered. If it's different from the sex that you were assigned at birth, then you're transgendered. Isn't it nice to have a word where we can have communication around transgendered people and not transgendered people? That's how we generally do it, right? So the absence of something makes the something more abnormal. Now we have words that we can talk about both cisgendered and transgendered individuals. I see a few crinkly faces, so go ahead. You had a question earlier.
The scenario, woman at birth, male at birth, with male primary characteristics, and then you said is now a female. I didn't know what you meant by that, like transgender.
So let's map that person. That's exactly what we're doing. So let's map that person. So that person was assigned the sex of male at birth, right? In terms of gender identity, that person identifies as a female.
That's what you meant.
Yep, Exactly. So their gender expression could be anywhere along this continuum. And I said that she was attracted to men, right?
You said she's now female.
I did say she's now female. So she could be anywhere along there, right?
I didn't know that part.
Yeah. Okay, good. So if we continue to map her and we say she's attracted to men, then she would be a heterosexual woman. Surgery is irrelevant in this and irrelevant to the conversation, right? If she were attracted to women, she would be a lesbian woman with her original parts or with parts that have been changed to confirm her gender. It doesn't really matter. And so one of the messages I want to get across, I see you just one second. One of the messages I want to get across is we should talk about people's genitals when it's clinically relevant. And we should not talk about people's genitals when it's not clinically relevant. I know Jean, so I'm going to do something with her, and I hope you're okay, Jean, but I think you can take it. Can I just ask you a couple questions about these kinds of things? Would that be okay? All right. So the sex that you were assigned at birth, female, and your gender identity, female. So you're a cisgendered woman. Please tell me about your vagina. Don't. But if we ask someone about their surgical status, what we're asking them in a way that we would never ask another client is, please describe your genitals to me. How welcoming is that? Hi, it's very nice to meet you. Oh, you're trans. Have you had surgery? Fuck you, right? That's so invasive and so personal. We all right? All right, good. Now, the other thing is, let me make one more point and then I'll get your question, I promise. The other thing is, these are still binary. They still go from A to Z, and they end at those points. There are many people who go, I'm not playing the binary game. I fall off of this system altogether. So they may call themselves queer, non-conforming, genderqueer, non-defined, or lots of other terms. So this is a way for us to understand kind of what's going on with people, but it still doesn't define everybody. In order to define anybody, we have to say, hi, I'm Tom. My preferred pronouns are he and him, so you know how to address me. And I'm a gay man. So I get to define that. Regardless of what you think is true, you don't get to. Because it's about identity, which is personal. You had a question?
Yeah, going back to how you walked through this sort of hypothetical introduction, my name is Tom, these are the pronouns. How do you find those out in a non-offensive way? And you can sort of tell that somebody may be in transition.
Yeah. What's your name? Al. What pronouns do you prefer to use when I refer to you? He and him. Okay, great. That's how. That simple, right? What's your name? I'm sorry? Terry. And what pronouns do you prefer to use? He and him. What's your name? Shelley. What pronouns do you prefer to use? She and her. Great. Fantastic. If I were doing a group, I said, we're all going to go around and we're going to introduce ourselves, and this is how we're going to do it. My name is Tom, and the pronouns that I prefer are he and him. And then we go to the next person. Very, very simple and straightforward. And how lovely and accepting is that, right? It means you get to decide today, in spite of your very masculine outward appearance, that maybe today you're going to let out that trans piece of you that none of us knows about, but today's the day. And so today, in spite of how you're dressed, it's she and her. And tomorrow we might go back to he and him, but you get control over that. Yeah.
So my babysitter for my kids is a transgender.
Speak really loud, Jean.
My babysitter for my kids is a transgender male. And so I was talking to Tom about it, and I said, I just noticed that our babysitter changed her name on Facebook to Will. And I was like, Will? I said, so I asked her, because she had always been Lexi with us for the last 6 years. She lives next door. She babysits for my kids like every day. And I said, are you Will now? And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, so do you want me to call you Will? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, you want the kids to call you Will? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try my best. I probably will make a mistake because I've been Lexi my whole life. I said, the kids, they're just gonna call you Lexi because they're,
Kids.
you know, they're kids, whatever. If they wanna know something, they're gonna ask me. Then Tom said, you know what, Jean, you really need to ask Will what pronouns he or she prefers. And so I did that, and Will was so happy that I did, because he said, I prefer he and him. And I was like, oh, he was very...
But I appreciate you saying that, because see how difficult it is when someone transitions, right? Particularly someone you know. So this is a friend who she trusts enough to care for her children. So it's really an intimate person in her life, right? And always known by one particular set of gender norms. And suddenly those gender norms have all changed. And so you see Jean's struggle with the he and him versus she and her. And I love it, because all you do is go, look at me struggling, I'm trying so hard, right? Those faces mean, I'm here for you, I'm working on it, and I'm doing my best, please help me, as opposed to just making the assumption that he is okay with you continuing to call him by female pronouns, right? And it's not. So every time you don't, you recognize it as your mistake, as opposed to who he is, not who she is, right? And that's the difficulty in this whole thing. So if it's your client, by the way, it's gonna be just as hard, I promise, right? Because suddenly one day, Bobby walks in and is Bobby with an I, right? So Bobby with a Y becomes Bobby with an I, wearing a dress, and all of a sudden you're like, what's he do? Take a step back, take a deep breath, find out who Bobby is today, and ask that very simple question. Thanks for asking that. Yeah. One final thing. We call it LGBT. We don't call it LGBTQ squared. We don't call it LGBTQI2S, right? This was hours of conversation that we had. And here's the reason why. I made a list of the terms that I know that apply to the community. And I made an acronym out of that, which I never finished up in my little exemplar here. But I got to 15 letters, and then I went, oh, I've forgotten 3, which are now on this list. And there are many that I don't know, right? 2 of the ones that you may not recognize, Mahu and Fa'afafine, are from the Pacific Islands, and they're specific terms that they use to refer to their communities out there. I don't know what they call them in the Philippines, but they have words for it. I don't know what people are called in Saudi Arabia. Yes, and they have words for it, right? And so every time we don't include someone in our acronym, we actively exclude them, because the more inclusive we try to be, the more obvious it is that I'm not included in that. So after hours of discussion, we decided that we're going to cast the smallest net possible to create the largest umbrella that we can, and everybody falls under that. Many people, by the way, are making the transition to SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity communities, which just kind of captures everyone under the umbrella. We were stuck with the old terms, given the old book, and so we did it in this way. But it was a calculated decision. Questions?
I want to know what, I'm going to butcher it, Fafani and Mahu. I want to know what they mean.
Fa'afafine. A Mahu is really just a gay man in Hawaiian, or a gay person in Hawaii. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what is third gender?
Thank you. I'll get back to that one in just a second. Fa'afafine is very interesting, and spent lots of time in the Pacific Islands. I'm glad you asked. In Samoa, they trans people are completely accepted. They call them Fa'afafine, and they are integrated into society. Gay men, completely vilified. There is nothing worse than being a gay man in Samoa, but totally fine to be a trans person. And so the immigration agent who checked me in at the airport was Fa'afafine. I met a whole group of them. Every training I had people who were clearly Fa'afafine in it. And they're just completely accepted. It's like nirvana for trans people, but more difficult than for the rest of the LGBT community, because they don't fit in there. So many of them will identify as Fa'afafine because it's better to be trans than it is to be gay and not. Third gender is just another way of describing it. Like the Native Americans have two spirits. There are groups who believe that there isn't just male and female. There's male and female and the other one, which is some combination of the two. And that third gender is that gender that combines male and female. And often in traditional Aboriginal cultures across the world, these people are elevated to very high status. They're the shamans, they're the wise elders, they're the healers very often, because they're seen as embodying the critical elements of male and female in one person. Yeah?
On that list, everything that's in another language would kind of go on that list. Is that what you're saying? Is Fafa'ini is basically transgender, correct?
Fafa'ini, but it's a specific interpretation of transgender that has very culturally latent context, as does bisexual, as does genderqueer, right? And so what I said very specifically is this list is far from inclusive. And I think even in the US, I thought of 4 or 5 others that I probably should add to this list because they're culturally laden, very specific to particular subgroups within the LGBT community, and therefore even my pretend inclusive list is far from inclusive for this country, let alone elsewhere. Did I address your question?
Yes, and
So
well,
give me the rest.
basically every single thing on that list can just be translated, but it would still be it. But the reason why Fafa'ini and Mapu is up there is due to the fact that they hold their own definition separate from anything else on that
That's
list.
right. They don't call themselves gay. So if I say gay, a Mahu in Hawaii is not there. If I say gay, a Fafa'afine, even if I say trans, a Fafa'afine
Is
in
not.
Samoa is not there.
Not the same.
She's Fafa'afine.
So they're not interchangeable.
That's right. We understand the concept in this way, but it's so culturally laden that we're limited in our ability to truly understand. Just like to a non-gay person, saying that you're gay is a culturally laden component that many people in the gay community don't like, and they push away from themselves because they're like, that doesn't apply to me, I'm going to use another term to refer to myself. So they're all culturally laden terms that exclude people if we don't specifically include them. So we exclude them all.
Is the questioning all of that?
Questioning, no, it's actually, I don't know. What's your sexual orientation? I'm not sure. What's your gender identity? It's a good question. Maybe one day we'll both figure it out, right? They truly are questioning. Often happens in young people, but my favorite questioning person that I've ever interacted with was a 72-year-old man who'd been married for 56 years. Is that not right? I think that's right. 50-some years. He came out to his wife after 2 years of questioning his own sexual orientation. And lived as a gay man once his wife died when he was 72. When he sought counseling. So it can happen at any one point in his life. Yeah.
Just a question, and this thing just an open-ended, just an open question. You said that he was questioning his sexuality in the last 2 years before he came out. Do you think that there is anything with that? Because a lot of people, most people that fall under the LGBTQ understand who they are at a very young age. Do you think there's any type of reasoning or like anything behind it?
We actually talked exactly about that. He recognized that there was something different about him, and he abhorred it. And so he lived his entire life as a heterosexual man.
So he knew at an early age it was just.
He never identified it though. He would and could never have said, I'm actually a gay man and I'm living a lie. He didn't live a lie.
Yes.
He recognized that there was something unique about him that made him different from his heterosexual peers, and he figured out what it was when he was in his 70s. Sad and amazing and hallelujah, right? How fantastic that he got to explore that piece of himself and live with integrity at the end of his life. All right, let's talk a little bit more about culture. Is that culture? This thing we're talking about? You say sure, why? Absolutely.
Part of that person's life, that's what culture is to me.
Okay, part of life, their identity, everything that they do. Good, yeah.
And
Another thing, culture isn't, so to say, like, culture isn't inherited. Culture is something that you kind of surround yourself with. Basically, it's like how you are brought up in a sense, or what your environment is, who raises you. These things are, you learn the culture is acquired. So basically, when you identify as LGBT, you adapt to like the culture that surrounds it. So basically, it's your environment, so to say.
It's your environment, it's your family, it's your sense. I mean, I think there's probably genetic components in it, in that people feel different. If you just talk about who they are and how they were when they were very young, you do see some cultural differences that seem to be kind of innate in people that probably come from things we don't understand about genes, but it's reified as a societal construct that has to do with your family, has to do with your language, has to do with your religion. All of these things that are on this grid all impinge on culture. And if we talk about Latinos, we can see all of those things impacting on Latino culture in one way or another, depending on how immersed they are in the culture versus how separated they are from the culture. So very different for each person, but really defining of that aspect of the person's life. And if we talk about LGBT people, not as one community, but as four, we can begin to see each of those communities being impinged on, being shaped, being molded by these kinds of variables, either by stepping aside from them or by immersing yourself in them. Who am I, and what am I expecting of myself in terms of my behavior? What does my mom expect of me? What does my priest expect of me? What does the old lady down the street expect of me? Those are culturally laden pieces of identity that I hold for myself, and you might think I'm wrong entirely, and that's nice, right? But it has nothing to do with my identity as culture, as my culture, even if we come from exactly the same place with very similar kinds of experiences. Because you have your definitions and I have mine, and that's what we want to help people get to.